Is that Keaton talking?
This time, call the meeting to order.
Heavenly Father, we are close to Thanksgiving Day, but we are mindful that every day is a day to give thanks. We thank you for the blessings, the gifts that you continue to bestow upon us, bestow upon our country, upon our community here. We pray for all of those, around the world, in our country, who are sick, who are suffering at this time, that you'll bring healing and peace to all human minds and hearts. Pray that your Spirit will guide our leaders here, and especially as they've gathered for this meeting. May we be mindful always of the blessings and gifts that you provide through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any changes to the agenda?
We do have one under proclamations and recognitions. We already have employee service awards, but we need to add one other recognition for Officer Freestone.
Okay. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended. So moved. The move by Keaton, second by Marcia, to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to proclamations, recognitions, presentations. At this point, public comments. We'll go to public comments. This is a time where citizens are encouraged to speak publicly. We request that you state your name and address, speak respectfully, limit your comment to 3 minutes. As we did at our last meeting, we will entertain comments from those in person first, and then entertain any comments that might be made via Zoom after that. So, any public comments?
I'm going to leave my mask on. My voice carries pretty well. Justin Ford, 1431 Noble Road. Just want to give maybe a quick update for everyone here as far as the COVID situation at the state level, at our local hospital level. Locally, I think for us, everything that we were or have been worried about for the last 6 months, I think has pretty much hit and is happening for us. We went from having 2 rooms specifically for COVID to now we have 4 rooms specifically for COVID, and now we've added another 7 rooms for COVID. Thankfully, all those rooms are not full yet, but we've certainly had a big uptick in hospital admissions. Unfortunately, we're seeing some deaths occur. I think I can speak for all of us at the hospital and for all of the providers and all of our staff and ancillary staff that we just hope to have support. I think it's very important and vital for our community to get the support of local leadership, both at the city and county level. I think it's imperative that we have mask use. I think it's imperative that we have social distancing. I think we need to avoid large gatherings. Not one of those things is going to be foolproof in getting our numbers down. I think it's going to have to be a combined effort with all of those things. We've had a rough day today. At one time today, we had pretty much all our emergency room full, and we had patients that were waiting to get up to the emergency room. We had to put a contingency plan in place to where we were maybe going to have to take some of those patients and put them into our COVID rooms in our clinic. So things are pretty dire. We really can't get anybody upstream. Pretty much the only way we're going to get you upstream to a larger facility is if you're going to need a ventilator at this point. I talked to a friend who knows a physician in Pratt, Kansas. They had a major trauma over the weekend, and the closest place that they could find to transfer that patient was Lubbock, Texas. So things are scary. We just ask for support. I was happy to see Governor Kelly come out with the statewide mask mandate. I don't think a few weeks of a mask mandate is going to help. I think it's going to be a lot longer period of time that we're going to need to do it before we really start to see case numbers and we start to see the curve starting to bend. So we appreciate your support. Please help us as much as you can and keep doing what we can. Anything I missed, Dave? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lines?
We have two on Zoom that would like to speak. Dr. Bro and would be the first one.
Okay.
Whenever you're prepared.
If no one else here,
I'd like to speak.
okay.
So I'm Dwight White, and I'm the pastor of the Christian church. You guys, everybody knows that. I want us to be safe, but Dr. Poor just said not one of these things is going to slow this down. I want to reiterate back to the 3% radical minorities. We talked about this last time. What you're going to see is you're going to push people into that category in this county, in this community. And what that means is you're going to have people who are in the majority, the peaceful majority, the circle that's way over here, get pushed into this minority group over here that will be radical. And the question I have for the city and for the commissioners is, how are we going to enforce this, number one? Are we going to pay the police overtime, and do we have the funds for that, number one? And number two, are we going to start getting people, Jesus, the Pharisees came to Jesus and said, what's the greatest commandment? And they were trying to throw him in a trick bag, okay? And he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And oh, by the way, love your neighbor as yourself. And what that does is it takes those 10 commandments, if you guys know this or don't, and it quotes the first 4 that have to do with loving God. No idols, don't do anything against God. And the next 6 are about loving other people, because if I love Dr. Poor, I won't go kill him, right? If I love Dr. Poor, I won't try to steal anything from him. I won't covet anything. That's that next 6, okay? But he goes above that and beyond. He says, love your neighbors yourself, which means if my neighbor has a problem with me and I'm walking out of my house and they call the police because I'm not wearing a mask, which I do wear a mask most of the time, okay, because I'm in the public. How are we going to enforce that, and how are we going to pay for that? And when we start pushing people into the radical minority, because the one thing I'll guarantee you, and I've seen this multiple times overseas, when we start pushing people into that circle, that group will grow. Now, right now, you got 97%, and this is a countrywide, worldwide statistic, all right? 97% of the peaceful majority. But when you start pushing, you start taking civil liberties away from people, all right? That's tyranny, by the way, is what that is. That's slavery, when you start taking civil liberties. And I understand being safe. Listen, we need to stay in as much as we possibly can. We need to do whatever it takes. I'm all in for wearing a mask. But what are we going to do with the handicapped? I came to you a year ago with an issue of when domestic violence calls get called on the police and it's 2 handicapped people fighting and somebody's kicked a fan, somebody's getting arrested. All right? Call me before that happens, because most of them know who I am. What happens when we don't have, I took a handicapped guy to lunch yesterday at ACG's. He didn't have a mask. Now, they had some out there, but everybody who came in the back door that didn't have a mask on had to go all the way to the front door to get seated. And that's where the masks are at. How are we going to enforce this? How are we going to pay for it? And then what are we going to do when people start?
10 seconds.
All right. So those are my questions. How are we going to take care of this as a city? And how do we love our neighbors to do that?
Time's up.
Any other in-person comments? Okay, we'll move over to the Zoom comments. Dr. Bro on deck.
First, I'd just like to go ahead and thank our county commissioners for passing the mask mandate this week. I really appreciate that, especially given our dire situation here at our hospital, as well as hospitals around the state and the region. Just like to give you guys some numbers that you can kind of put things into perspective. For the last 7 days, like when we look at cases around the region, we look at number of cases per 100,000. So we adjust things for the amount of people in the county. So Cloud County, over the past 7 days, we have 174 cases per 100,000. Republic County, they're even worse, our neighbor, 188 per 100,000. Washington County, just right over from Republic, 251 cases per 100,000. We're all counties previously without mask mandates. You look at the mask mandated counties around the state. So look right to our south at Saline County. They only have 83 per 100,000. We have 174. They have 83. So population adjusted, we're doing way worse than they are in terms of cases. Sedgwick County, 111. We have 174. Wyandotte has 59. 174 for Cloud County. This is support that the mask mandates do help decrease the numbers, help flatten the curve. Now, there was a KU study here, I think about 2 weeks ago, that showed that the unmasked counties continue to rise while the masked counties flattened about 2 weeks after implementation. So don't expect to get any results these first 2 weeks after a mask mandate, because you won't. After that, the curve will tend to flatten and it will maintain that for the next several months. That's what the studies have shown. We know that our percent positivity rate in the county has been close to 66% over the past 2 weeks. That was as of Monday. I'm not sure how those numbers have adjusted since Monday, but it's close to 66% as of Monday. That means if you are having symptoms and you test, most likely you have COVID.
10 seconds.
Clay County today had 70 new cases and 1 new death. They are referring to the same larger hospitals that we are.
That's your time.
All those hospitals have the same problem.
Thank you, Dr. Bro.
Carmen on the line, would like to speak.
I'm sorry?
Carmen?
Carmen?
Hi, I'm on Zoom. My name is Carmen Brady. My address is 922 Republican Street, apartment number 2 in Concordia. I just wanted to extend my sincere thanks to our public health officials and our public health workers who have been pushing so hard for so long on so many different fronts. I also wanted to extend appreciation for part of last week's discussion. At that time, Commissioner Lamberts, I believe it was, mentioned that it was against his personal philosophy to impose restrictions, but that he believed the time for personal philosophy was gone since people weren't making the right choice. And I think that's a difficult realization and a hard line to draw, I imagine, for any official. And I know for myself and my own personal philosophies, and I just appreciated his reflection on the matter. I also want to say, and I don't know, no, I'll skip that part. And I just hope and encourage that you as public officials continue to follow expert advice. So thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Anyone else?
Looks like Mr. Jones would like to speak. Harvey Jones.
I'd just like to say if Dr. Bro's got more to say on the subject, I'd like to give her my time, please.
Can we do that or not?
Can I do that?
Unfortunately, the public comments that we have are limited to 3 minutes. I appreciate the thought. I appreciate the wisdom that Dr. Bro has to offer, but we will try to stay with the format that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Dave Garnis.
Dave Garnis, 883 North 230th Road in Aurora. So I wanted to just touch on a couple of things as I've listened to the comments. I think the first thing that I'd like to point out in support of Dr. Poor is that I just hope that people understand it's the upstream issue. It's not only just the fact that we're sitting here and we have staff that are sick, which affects our ability to staff beds. Because if you don't have the employees, you can't staff all the beds. It has to do with acuity, et cetera. So that's number one. We have staff that are sick as well. And that's the same across the nation as far as healthcare workers and being able to staff beds. I think the other thing is kind of referring to the mask mandate and it being a tool, not the only tool. So I've been positive COVID. I tested positive, so I'll throw that out there. So how in the heck did I get positive? Because I wear a mask. I've been very diligent about wearing a mask. So you're right. It's not the end all save all. And I use the analogy of it's kind of like a suit of armor for a knight. You know, they've got the head armor, they've got the chest armor, you know, the lower body armor. And if they go out into battle with any one of those pieces of armor not in place, they're more susceptible to get killed, injured, or something of that nature if they go into battle. So how did I get it? Well, again, I didn't practice all of the pieces, the social distancing, the hand sanitation, washing, and the mask wearing. You know, how do I feel that I got it? It's not because I didn't wear masks. It's because I went into one location, which isn't even in our county. And when I walked out of there with my fountain pot, I did not hand sanitize after that. And 3 days later, I was sitting in my house positive with COVID. So the point is, if I would have had my mask on and hand sanitized and kept my social distancing and practiced all of them together, as many of our employees and many of the people in the community do, we will protect ourselves better. And so I think, again, it's not just a mask that's going to solve all, it's not the magic bullet, but it is one of the pieces of the puzzle that if we strengthen that, I think we will see, and statistically, we will see the curve bend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garnis. Any other public comments? Hearing none at this time, we will close public comments. Will we move on to executive session or proclamations?
Proclamations.
We'll move on with proclamations, recognitions. First off is Employee Service Awards.
Am I the only one? Where are you? One up here. Sure where to stand with our new setup here. Center? Okay. Bruno Rabine's official title is building inspector. However, he wears many hats. He's our planning and zoning director. He is our building official. He is the building inspector, and he's the floodplain manager, and any other duties that we can find to assign to him, he takes on willingly, agreeably. He is a one-man shop, so he doesn't necessarily have people that directly supervise, but he works really well with a lot of people, both within our office and his team of folks outside the office, including all the contracting community and the design community as well. So we really appreciate the service that he's given. He's been with us for 20 years. That's a long stint of service and a long time to make a positive impact on the community. He was here when some of the first building codes were adopted, when some of the first zoning regulations went into play. So he's incredibly familiar with those, and his work has helped to impact to make our community a more positive place by being consistent, by developing those roles and things that need to happen to be able to make an orderly development of our community, an orderly expansion of our community, and just make it a better place to live for everybody. So Bruno, in appreciation, we've got some special gift here for you, a certificate. I think your wife wants a picture. There you go, aim that way. There you go.
Can you tell if I'm smiling?
Just keep your eyes open. See your eyes. Here's the blue there.
At this point, an award
Wait,
presentation. Oh,
We got more.
one more. Okay, I'm sorry.
Bill.
Okay.
I'm going in the order of.
Okay. Chief.
I just want to say I value every member of my department very much. I don't have a long speech, but I just want to make that perfectly clear. Bill White is one of our veteran dispatchers. He's normally working when everybody else, pretty much everybody in here is sleeping. So usually 11 at night till 7 in the morning. And I always appreciate that when somebody's willing to do that. Bill is in charge of our lost and found, make sure that stays organized. Things come in, we gotta make sure things get rotated out. He's also our department safety officer, in addition to all the dispatch duties. So our department does a monthly training for safety. So we read over material and tests. So we usually stay up to date on that. But Bill's been with us 20 years, making me feel really old. I remember when Bill was probably 9 or 10 years old running the streets of Aurora, Kansas. So anyway, congratulations, Bill.
Thank
Here's
you.
your material. Thank you for your service.
Other employee service awards. Moving on
Yes.
to award
Oh,
presentation.
yes, we got. Brad's another one of our veteran employees, 15 years he's been with us. Brad is our detective corporal. He's worked his way up. I know when Brad first came on, we had the NCK Star tactical team that he was immediately a member of. And I just remember a time when we were training in the park and we were doing a lot of running, and I think we got tired because about all of us tripped at one time and we fell all over each other. And then we jumped up to make sure nobody saw it. But anyway, I appreciate Brad. Brad is, like I said, he's our detective. Awesome at that job because, he's very meticulous about going over stuff. He doesn't jump into anything without investigating his way into it first. And that's what we need for somebody in that type of position. So thank you very much, Brad. Thank you. Appreciate your years of service.
John Christensen's been with us full-time for 10 years, volunteer even more than that, but he's one of our best paramedics. He's also an IC, so he teaches EMT classes and fire classes for us. So all of my guys make my job easy, and John's one that's always there for us when we need him, and one of the most excellent paramedics I think in the state, so appreciate it.
There's two others that weren't here. Jeff Roberts, well operator, 20 years, and David Gilkison, mechanic, 15 years.
Okay, moving on with award presentation. Supremo.
We as law enforcement officers are kind of expected to do a lot of stressful stuff and deal with a lot of difficult situations, but once in a while something will come up where an officer goes above and beyond what would normally be expected. And we did have a case where this happened. On February 11th, this past year, 2020, Officer John Primo received information that a person was threatening to harm himself that same day and made it widely known. It was also known that this person had a negative opinion of law enforcement. Officers went to the person's house, contacted him, and the person was immediately uncooperative and wanted to be left alone. At first, the person became extremely angry and wanted the officers to leave. Some of the officers backed away and got out of sight, while Officer Primo continued to talk with him and was able to establish a rapport. This is where he went above and beyond. After 15 minutes of visiting, Officer Primo was able to convince the man to go to the hospital to get help. To visit with somebody that long and have the patience was completely amazing. With Officer Primo's patience and negotiating ability, he was able to get the person to a facility where he could get help and kept everyone involved safe. After this incident, we were on very friendly terms with the person, and he was thankful for Officer Primo's patience with him. He stated later that there was a gun taped under the table he's sitting by and thought about grabbing it. So I was going to present John with a certificate. And this is a Distinguished Service Award. And also, whenever we put our Class A uniforms on, we have medals, and you will be getting a medal also. So, and John, since his time with us, he has become a range master, a field training officer for new officers that come on. So he is promoted to senior officer. That's his new badge. So.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. All right, at this time we'll move on for an executive session. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Mark,
Seconded by Christie.
second by Christie, that the city commission recess into executive session for consultation with an attorney for information deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship, the exception KSA 75-4319B2, with Amy Lang, Justin Farrell, and Rick Frederickson in attendance, and to reconvene in the city commission chamber at 6:20 p.m. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Need a new motion then?
Maybe you could just state the same motion as before rather than reading it all. I think that would be okay.
To remake the motion that was previously made for executive session to reconvene at 6:30.
Second.
The moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Excuse myself.
Justin, can you hear us?
I can, yep.
I can hear you.
Moving on to action agenda. Ordinance 2020-3170, masks in public spaces and enforcement of quarantine orders.
Mayor and Commissioners, last Tuesday, when you passed the resolution of support for public health efforts for the city, you'd also requested that an ordinance be drafted that would take us to the next step, which would require masks, and would require or illuminate for the public the need to go ahead and enforce the quarantine and isolation orders, and that also includes some method of punishment. And so this is what this ordinance has done. It was drafted last week. Justin and I worked on it very closely, and it was patterned a little bit after Governor Kelly's Executive Order 2052. We also took a look at the city of Salina's mask mandate. We also looked at Ellsworth counties and Clay counties that were just recently passed last week as well. So it's kind of a combination of those. We also visited with the local school district to see what they already had in place and how we could make sure that was incorporated so it didn't disrupt their normal operations. We visited with Dave at the hospital, shared it with Brandy Bray as well to make sure that it met their needs and what they were asking of us too. So this is the result of that effort. Since this was published on our website, I did have one change. I guess it includes definitions. So we defined several different items, including isolation, quarantine orders, social distancing, a public space, and what a mask is. It includes requirements of individuals where they need to be able to wear a mask. It includes requirements of businesses and organizations. And it also includes exemptions. And this is where the enforcement piece comes in. Under exemption 1A, persons aged 5 years and under, we had originally included when this was published an exception for students while attending school. So we said that children who are 5 and under don't have to wear a mask except while they're attending school. We were thinking in terms of our local public school district children. We were not thinking in terms of the private preschools. So this actually becomes more restrictive than what everybody's practice has been now. So I would ask that we take out that phrase that says except students while attending school. If we take that phrase out, it matches what the schools and the preschools are doing now and still allows our local USD to be more restrictive and require their children, their students that are under the age of 5 to wear masks while they were students. And that's what we want to be able to do with this, is to make sure that individual businesses can still be more restrictive, just not less. So we want to give them that flexibility. There are exceptions in here for people with medical and mental health conditions. There are exceptions for people who are deaf and hard of hearing, for persons who wear a face covering might create risk, for people driving alone or with only members of their household. It requires, and those are all very consistent with the governor's executive order that she put out last July. Clay County included a neat thing, which was for speakers and presenters to an audience if they can maintain 10 feet of separation. So Pastor Dwight, Father David, that would include them. So when they're up there at the pulpit, they can speak. Or here in this setting, as long as we're 10 feet away from people, we can pull that mask down. So I think that's important for clarity of speech. It also includes exemptions for people who are obtaining a service for the nose and face. It's a little bit hard to get a cavity filled if you have a mask on, so that's an important exemption. For people who are seated at a restaurant or other establishment that offers food and beverage while they're eating or drinking. Again, very hard to eat and drink while you have your mask on, but when you're walking into the space, while you're waiting on your food, the way this is worded, you would have to have your mask on. The way this is worded, again, also closely mirrors what the other entities have done that we looked at, basically saying that your table needs to be about 6 feet away from others. This is a little bit concerning. We went through this last spring with our local restaurants, where the health department ordered that they go every other booth or every other table in an effort to make that same 6 foot distance. The way this language is written, it basically brings that back into play. And again, that's very consistent with what the governor's order was and the other orders that we took a look at. This includes the same language as the others, athletes who are engaged in activity that a professional or recreational association, a regulatory entity or medical association, such as our health department, or other public health oriented entity has deemed cannot be safely conducted while wearing a mask or face covering. We went further to create 2 more subcategories to help us reflect exactly what our school district is doing right now. So persons who are engaged in strenuous physical activity, indoors or outdoors, provided that they can maintain social distancing. So this would cover your gyms. Your gyms can stay open. You can still go to the gym to work out as long as you can stay 6 feet away from someone else. You don't have to wear a mask. And we think that that's important for people to be able to continue to do those activities. And then it also identifies athletes who are actively engaged in organized sports activities. Currently, the way our school district is operating is when athletes are on the court, engaged in practice, or on the court engaged in competition, they don't wear their masks. When they go to the sideline, when the coaches are at the sideline, when the spectators are there, they have to put their masks on. That's what this statement is saying and reflecting, so that would remain the same. And again, we think that's important to support our schools. Based on the information that we have right now from the health department, we know that the cases are not being spread as a result of those activities, so we feel fairly confident in that statement. And then also persons engaged in any lawful activity where wearing a mask is prohibited by law. So again, a lot of those exceptions match what other entities have done. Then we go into enforcement. Our enforcement is enforceable by city's home rule power, which is the KSA 12101. It does include progressive state of fines plus court costs. Court costs are about $80, so this does make for an expensive affair. The intent of these punishments, again, is very consistent with the other ones that we've taken a look at. Salina and Ellsworth County, I believe, it matches what they have in place. Our hope is that people will comply as much as possible. We know that our officers will use their professional discretion. We know that they will be issuing some warnings first, so people will know they will be plenty warned. So the idea, again, is to take that one step further than the resolution and really compel people to follow and do what they're supposed to be doing. And these enforcements not only go for the mask violations, but also for quarantine and isolation orders. One thing we should note about quarantine and isolation orders is that officers can already enforce that. When we adopted the UPOC this year, there's section 1029 in there that it reiterates that violation of a public health order, which is what quarantine and isolation orders are, can be, Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, can also be a Class C misdemeanor. So you can already get a ticket for violating your quarantine orders. The reason we wanted to include it in here is because we know that our general public doesn't often have access to that UPOC language. They don't really know that that's already in there. By including that in our ordinance, this is publicized. This is going to be included into our city code that people can go to our website and access it anytime they want if they need access to that language. So we wanted to make that available for everybody. We also have built in here that we are going to review this ordinance at every meeting with the commissioners. And at a point in time when we think the metrics tell us that we're at a good point where we can rescind this ordinance, we want to rescind it. We don't want it to be in perpetuity. We expect that by people complying with this ordinance that we're going to flatten that curve. We're going to get through the bulk of this. We're going to get to a point where we have some herd immunity, where we have some vaccines available, and where we can start to live with this just as we do the common cold and the flu every year. So we expect to get to that point. So we expect to be able to lift this ordinance. I've passed out for you a sheet called community gating criteria, and this is built off of the community gating criteria or the school gating criteria that our schools are used, that was developed in conjunction with the Department of Education and Department of Health. And these are just a few of the metrics. I've also talked a little bit with Dave Garnis to say, you know, what other metrics should we be looking at? And you heard him and Dr. Ford talk about the situation with our local hospital and then our upward hospitals. So what we would intend to do is look at our 2-week county positivity rate, and we're seeing that reported on that situation report that James Cullen provides to us every day. We also are looking at the cumulative county incidence rate. So if you look over a 2-week period, how many new positive cases do we have? Well, we looked at the trends to see if they're increasing, decreasing, or stable. And then we want to look at hospital capacity. And hospital capacity, as Dave has told you before, is going to be a function of physical bed space, staffing availability, equipment availability, and then what the patients actually need to be well cared for. And I've asked Dave, and he's graciously agreed to help us out every couple of weeks when you have your regular meetings, be able to provide us a report with that information to help us make decisions too. The color bandings follow the same color bandings that the school uses, which is green, yellow, orange, and red. And what my recommendation to you on this is, if we can get to the green or the yellow stage, I think we should rescind the ordinance. That tells us that we're at a low enough rate that should be manageable for our healthcare system, which is the reason that we really want everybody to follow these measures, is so that we can work our way through this virus. It can work its way through the community. We're not going to stop it, but we want to be able to slow it down enough that it's manageable for our healthcare providers. If we remain in the orange and red zones, which right now we're quite a bit in the red zone right now, that this ordinance would stay in effect. So that's my recommendation from the metrics, to be able to look at this and continue to look at it, to make sure that we rescind it at an appropriate time. So tonight, with that, commissioners, you have a few options at your disposal. This is in front of you as an action item, so we do expect a vote. You can vote against it and take it down. We know that the county recently passed a resolution, a county health order on Monday, that is essentially the same as this one. So you could rely on their action and enforcement. You could table this for 30 days. And the reason I would say 30 days is that when the county passed theirs on Monday, they're choosing to revisit it and take a look at the metrics in 30 days to decide whether or not it can be rescinded or needed to be extended. So it makes sense to wait 30 days and see how the enforcement goes and watch that curve. I believe during the county commission meeting on Monday, Dr. Bro said it well, you're not going to see an immediate change in the next 2 weeks. It's going to take a couple weeks of wearing masks, and then the following 2 weeks we'll probably start to see that curve. So that's why they recommended 30 days. And then your other option is to go ahead and pass this, and then it would run simultaneously or concurrently with the county health order. All that does is give our officers, our city officers, an option of which court they want to write the ticket through. They could either write it through the district court or they could write it through municipal court. But other than that, all the other expectations stay the same. So with that, we'd entertain any questions. I know Justin's available to answer questions too on this, so feel free to ask away, converse amongst yourself, but we do eventually want to get to the point where we have a vote on this action tonight.
You know, I've been fairly outspoken about not wanting to legislate something. I said last Tuesday that a lot of that is philosophically based on what role government should have in our lives. I also have a tendency to be a bit of a control freak. And so I like local rule the best. I feel like we know what's best for ourselves. I think that the county taking action Monday was a great step. I personally would like to have some authority within ourselves as a city to be able to make those decisions as well. I didn't really appreciate, in theory and philosophy, a statewide mandate, because I feel like that's a decision that's made even farther from our home. And so when we have national decisions that are made, that's even farther from our home. I would be supportive of moving forward with the city approving this ordinance to run concurrently with the county, to use these metrics as a guide as to how long we as a city believe we need to have this ordinance in effect. I know there's been significant debate on the effectiveness of masks. I've received several calls telling me that I wasn't doing enough, telling me that we're not, we're doing too much. What I know is that the vast majority of medical professionals I personally know, not Dr. Z-Dog on Facebook or this doctor over in California, the medical professionals that I personally am acquainted with, the vast majority, there are some that say, oh, it's just a virus, it's going to run its course. The vast majority, significant majority, tell me they believe that these strategies that we're trying to implement give us the greatest chance to slow it down. If Campbell and Johnson tell me, hey, this is what your project needs for engineering, yeah, my buddy's been building barns for a long time. There's absolutely some knowledge with that. But I also appreciate the engineers to say, we really think that this is something that we need to supplement this. You got a good start, but we really think this is going to help. I want to trust the medical professionals that I've been talking with that say, we don't know that this is, one, this isn't going to stop it, but it can slow it down. And if this gives us some time to get people out of a hallway and into a legitimate hospital room, I think that we need to give them that deference and that respect to let them run their shop the best way they see fit, And if they're saying, hey, this is the thing that you could do that would really give us a hand, I think we have an opportunity and an obligation as a community to defer to their judgment. They could be wrong. They could be wrong. This may be stupid. It might not work. There are going to be people that rebel against it. I absolutely know that. But I believe that taking this, and I don't want to focus on the enforcement piece. The enforcement is important for those that will offer their middle finger as their reply. It's really about us as a community trying to do what we can to make sure that as many of us are able to get through this, whether it's flu season's here, cold season's here, absolutely. But somebody who's struggling with the flu needs a hospital room just as much as somebody who's struggling with COVID. Somebody who's in a car accident needs a hospital room just as much as somebody who's struggling with COVID. So I don't know, and time and history will tell us the impact of this virus specifically. But if our medical professionals are saying we need some relief, I think that we as a city have an opportunity to move forward in tandem with the county, in tandem now with the state, to do what we can as good neighbors, loving each other, taking care of each other the best we can through these strategies. We tried to do it on our own. We're deep in the red. That wasn't effective. I think that we should move forward as a city and go ahead and approve this to run in tandem with the county.
I'm in agreement. I appreciate the notion that we would be revisiting this on a regular basis, namely at least every 2 weeks. I don't want to impose these restrictions any longer than we have to. On the other hand, I also don't want to shut down our economy.
Right.
And I think that those are all really important things to consider. And it seems to me to be the simplest thing that we can do at this point.
Well, and I agree. I think I'm concerned about businesses having to shut down totally again. I know our son lives in California. They've closed all the restaurants, indoor eating. Well, in San Diego, they can eat outside all year. You can't do that in Concordia. And, you know, things like that. We have a new restaurant that's going to be opening soon. We have a new, another new business downtown that hopes to open soon. And I think it's important that we do everything as a community and as a commission, because that's what we were elected for, to help take care of our city. And that includes people. And I think by having them run together with the county, it gives our officers a lot better matrix to take care of people who won't comply. They aren't going to stop you just willy-nilly, but they will. They have that option, and it gives them 2 courts to go to. And helps our health professionals. I'm at the age where I'm probably going to need those people sooner than later, maybe. And I'd like to have a bed when I got up there. So,
Guys, I've known a long.
I really don't want to have 2 ordinances, a city and a county. I'd rather have one if we're going to have one. And the county has already passed theirs, and I'm not in favor of running in tandem and causing more confusion. I also believe that all of the precautions, including the masks, are important. Although there's a lot of data out there and studies that are qualified studies that show that masks do not flatten the curve absolutely, and I don't see how you're ever going to measure that when it's during cold and flu season. But I know masks have their place, and they're very important. It's I just read a study today by the New England Board of Medicine, and it's one that the military did, and 0.3% difference. The ones that wore masks, and of the thousands of soldiers that did it in a very controlled environment. 0.3, or the ones that did wear masks, there was a higher infection rate than the ones that didn't wear masks. Now, I know you can come up with other studies and other data, and Dorothy, I appreciate your input tonight too on looking at it per 100,000, because what I looked at recently was all of the big cities, all the big counties in Kansas, and looking at when they implemented their mask mandates and looked at their curves. And everybody's got the same curve. It's going out of, it's going up and out of control, and it's happening everywhere. And so people can believe what they want to believe, but I would, if we're going to have a mandate, I'd rather have it a county mandate that is for, for everybody. I'm not in favor of having tandem mandates. I do believe that the biggest focus of this whole thing is the enforcement of the quarantining aspect of it, and that's very important, because those people are going to be out infecting people with masks and without masks if they're live and are infectious. So anyway,
I feel the same way you do, Mark. I've studied this ever since we decided to put this in effect, and there are multiple different ways of looking at this. What I've come to the conclusion of is, up until 2020, when COVID became the thing, there are a lot of mask studies that show that unless you're using the N95, they are ineffective. And unless we are going to put in effect that we need to use N95 masks, I do not see this making any change other than turning people against people. And we face enough of that in today's society as it is. It's become something that is, as a young person looking at this and looking at the future for my children, it scares me half to death to think that we are so torn on small things that if we would just sit down and take politics and all the crap out of it and look at the research that has been done for years and still reads the same thing up until this year. The CDC was still saying that masks cause increased levels of CO2 in the body. That was from the CDC earlier this year. Now all of a sudden you get on there and you can't find that. And that's what, there's too much stuff going on here. It can be the same for so long and through all these other pandemics, but this one's different. And why? I don't know. But everything that I have found prior to 2020, unless it is an N95 respirator mask, it is no good. And to tear the community further apart because of this is just asinine to me. I can't get over that hump to say that this is worth it, that it's going to make that big of a difference. When we called this rise in cases 6 months ago, we knew it was coming 6 months ago. Everybody knows it. It's so hard to blame it on not wearing a mask now, but it's like we're trying to find something to blame it on because we don't know what it is. And I'm 100% against this. Business owners, we're going to have a lot of backlash on this. And I would encourage everybody to please go out and look at anything other than Facebook. Get on and look at the CDC from 2019. Get on and look up OSHA. OSHA has it on here. Occupational Health and Safety has theirs. Everything is against long-term wearing of masks. Anything over 3 hours is considered long-term. We have my kids in school wearing these things for 8 hours with 4 breaks. It's irritating, very irritating that we seem to think that this mask is going to be our save all, and it's not. We should have taken other measures way before now when we knew it was coming. We got comfortable with it. We left it. I get it, but our masks are not going to be what we need to go to now. And I would be more than happy to share any of this information with anybody that'd like to ask for it. I will, however, entertain the fact of going out 30 days and seeing what the county comes up with. I think that's a fantastic idea, but there needs to be other things added than a mask. If we're going to do it, we might as well do it right. Make everybody buy N95s that we can't find to actually make it effective. There's studies, the virus is spread via aerosol. It floats right through our masks. It's too small. They don't catch them. It may catch a very small bit of them, but it doesn't catch the virus. It's not going to stop it. It's not going to slow it down enough to make a difference at this point where there's so much of it out there, it's pointless. And until we figure out a different method of taking care of this, such as a vaccine possibly, pointless for us to argue and cause more hatred upon the community than we already have.
I feel like that conflict already exists, and the conflict will exist whether regardless of our action this evening, that greater conflict, I think is there. And I think that there is a lot of information to try to sort through. I guess I keep going back to what Dr. Poor, Dr. Bro, our medical providers here in our area are saying, this gives us our best chance, not a great chance, not ideal. This gives us our best shot to slow it down. It's not a study, it's our people saying, I'm in the trenches. If you want to do something, try doing this.
And it's not just the mask, it's washing your hands,
Staying
social
home when you're sick.
distancing, staying home when you're sick, all of those things.
And I think
that's what this ordinance talks about.
it's not long-term, it's really not long-term wearing of masks. As you read in this, it's wearing of masks in these very specific environments in which you are unable to maintain at least 6 feet of distance.
A lot of people's works are going to require them to wear them all the time because there is no way of keeping 6 foot of distance is where I'm going. There's going to be your cases that.
But the healthcare workers wear them all day long in the hospital.
There's studies in here
And
about
they
the effects
have
on them as well.
For years.
From OSHA, there's studies in here of increased breathing, increased medication intake because of the headaches, increased CO2, which causes, cardiovascular effects. So if we put this in effect, Justin, this may be a question for you. If we put this in effect and say somebody does go down due to wearing a mask and we have the mandate in, is that something that can fall back on us because we mandated them to wear a mask for so long with an underlying condition that may cause them to fall and bust their head? Or is that something that back on a business owner and if it was happening in their business?
No, I think, Keaton, what you're doing is asking a lot of different questions. So when it comes to a liability, no, there's not going to be liability there. There's a lot of exceptions that go into this right now. We're in the middle of a massive health crisis, trying to mitigate that. So there's going to be some immunities to that as well. But then on top of that, you also said if they had some kind of a risk or something like that. Well, there's exceptions that are built into that mandate. So, we're not going to be making someone who physically cannot wear that or has some issue. Obviously, we're not going to make them wear that. So, I can't speak to the science because I don't have that in front of me. So honestly, I can't tell you if that science is correct when it comes to the breathing in extra CO2 or extra cardiovascular issues. I would leave that to I'm a halfway decent lawyer. I'm not a good doctor, so I don't know what that would what that entails. But from a liability standpoint, there's not going to be nobody's going to come back and sue us because they think they got something from their mask. So
could I sue the city because I'm wearing a seatbelt and I get in an accident and I bust my ribs?
Yeah,
so
exactly. No.
Is that the city's fault for making me wear a seatbelt? So now the city is liable for my injury?
No, they would not be able to do that.
I move to approve ordinance 2020-3170.
Second.
It's been moved by Christie and seconded by Marcia to approve ordinance 2020-3170. Is there other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye.
So do we just need a majority or do we need?
Justin, Stacy, is that sufficient to pass it?
Yeah, you would need a majority. So from what I heard, and maybe I don't think we need to necessarily roll call. If I'm incorrect, it sounds like it passed 3-2. I believe Mark and Keaton were against, and the rest of you were for. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Then it would pass as it was proposed.
Motion passes. Moving on to the minutes of the November 4th, 2020 meeting.
I would move to approve the minutes of the November 4th, 2020 meeting.
Second,
The move by Keaton, seconded by Christie to approve the minutes of the November 4th, 2020 meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to minutes of the November 10th, 2020 special meeting.
I move to approve minutes from November 10th, 2020 special meeting.
Second.
Okay. Been moved by Christie, seconded by Mark to approve the minutes of the November 10th, 2020 special meeting. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Appropriation ordinance 21.
I move we approve appropriation ordinance number 21.
Second,
It's been moved by Marcia, seconded by Christie to approve appropriation ordinance 21. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. 4Kids Fuel and More CMB license.
This is what was brought to you last meeting, and we had not heard back from the KBI to do the investigation of the owners, and this property is the truck stop in the North Development. And this will be for the 2020 license, and next month we'll be doing the 2021 for him, but he needs one for this year. And everything's checked out with KBI and it's all good.
I would move to approve the 4Kids Fuel and More CMB license for 2020.
Second.
Been moved by Keaton, seconded by Mark to approve the 4Kids Fuel and More CMB license for 2020. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Resolution 2020-2114, defining the corporate limits of the city.
Thanks to Ken, we got an update on this resolution, which we need to do every year, that we annex any property into the city. And earlier this year, we annexed the truck stop in the North Development. So this is added onto this resolution.
Can I just say, I love reading real estate descriptions.
You're the only one.
I grew up in a real estate office. I actually can make sense of it.
I move to approve resolution 2020-2114.
Second,
It's been moved by Keaton, seconded by Christie to approve resolution 2020-2114. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Resolution 2020-2115, designating official news outlet.
In September, you passed the charter ordinance, which allows the city to use our website as the official place to publish legal notices rather than newspaper. And as I stated before, we'll still continue to use the newspaper, but the protest petition, is that what I want to say?
Protest period.
Protest period is 60 days. So 61 days was November 2nd, 3rd, somewhere in there. So that does make that effective. And the resolution just follows up with basically the same language.
I move to approve resolution 2020-2115.
Second.
Been moved by Marcia, seconded by Keaton to approve resolution 2020-2115. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Campbell and Johnson Engineering Services Agreement for Mill End Overlay.
Mayor and Commissioners, we have an agreement here between the city of Concordia and Johnson for a mill and overlay project. The project is 9th Street from Lincoln to Matthew.
I wonder if we maybe shouldn't have taken a break after the.
Yeah. This project's been in, we had it in master plan on all the streets and stuff. So And we talked about it in the budget, and it was budgeted for last year. And I'd like to get that started this year so we can do it next year. You got any questions? I could answer.
You know, and there was a street real close to where I grew up and it had a south-facing fence. And it was a real tall fence, and it ran the whole length of the street, and just, no matter what, every spring, that road was a disaster because it never got that chance to really put that thaw out. So I'm wondering, I know that's kind of an issue, at least for a couple blocks with this. I would imagine that the engineers are able to, is there anything that we can do to try to minimize or reduce Mother Nature's effect on this, or do we just do the best we can and try to keep it the best we can?
The only thing I can see down through there is right off 81 highway going to the east. There's a lot of trees and it's on the convent property. You have to get permission to get up there and cut them off that bank and stuff. That would let some light in. I kind of did the same thing, but then in the Cedars out on 18 from State Street to Cedar in the cemetery, cutting every other one out so the sun could get through a little bit because it was always slick coming up to that stop sign there.
Well, I think it's,
And you got
the trees, you also have that sandstone
yeah,
embankment that,
it's pretty tall too.
yeah.
It really don't get no sun, you know, like right now, it's where the sun's clear out there, it's low on the side. It's just gonna be hard.
Okay.
Hillside too.
Sure.
And you got buildings that are close there too.
Okay. I think it's an important thing. I drive it almost every day on my way to and from work, so I know that it would benefit from some treatment, so.
All right.
Okay.
I move to approve the Campbell and Johnson Engineering Services Agreement for the mill and overlay on 9th Street between Lincoln and Matthew.
Second.
The move by Keaton, seconded by Marcia to approve the Campbell and Johnson Engineering Services Agreement for mill and overlay on 9th Street between Lincoln and Matthew. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Managers report.
Getting to that time of year again, it's closing on the end of the year. That'll be time for my annual evaluation coming up here very shortly. So be expecting to receive the evaluation document. I am reviewing a couple of different kinds of documents that might give us some different types of feedback. So we'll take a look at using one of those maybe this year, but we'll be scheduling that for an upcoming time. Other than that, we continue to finish out the purchases from our direct aid plan through the coronavirus relief funds and hope to finalize that here next month.
Staff reports. None? Mayor and Commissioner comments. Marcia?
Well, I'd like to just thank everybody for really looking at this ordinance we passed. See how it's going to affect people. Hopefully we'll get through this, get on with our lives in a more normal manner. So thanks to everybody.
Pete?
I have nothing this evening.
Christie?
I would echo Marcia's comment about the careful consideration that I think everybody has put into that, and would like to thank city staff, Amy and Justin in particular, who worked so hard to draft that. I just have been dealing with hospitals, large hospitals, in the last 72 hours, and this is real, and I believe it's real. And as my mother says, Christy, it's all over the world, and that is true. And so it may not seem that we can do much, but it's a way that we can address it in our very small community in a very small way.
Mark?
I too want to thank Amy and the staff and everyone who worked on that, and Justin, everyone. It was a difficult thing to work on. I know people worked on it you know, and they were able to put things aside and you know, trudge forward through it. And I appreciate all that work. By not voting for it doesn't mean I don't appreciate the work. I think we should, you know, like I said before, I wanted to extend it. But our thing for 30 days and go with the county. But that it is what it is, and that's why we all have votes, and I'm fine with that. I hope we're able to accurately or have some way of tracking this, that we can get some clean data out of it. I know it's going to be difficult because you know, we're going to have this cold and flu season, and we're got the holidays coming up. So the number, I don't want to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I want everybody to understand, and I'm not being pessimistic, but things are probably going to spike. I mean, people are going to get together on the holidays, and people are going to travel, and people are going to do things, and it's cold and flu season, and it's going to be difficult because I truly, in my heart, do not want to see all of those things make it look like, hey, this mask mandate did not work, because it's going up against those things. And regardless of what I believe and what I've you know, read and believe, I truly hope this does slow things down. And when you look at like I said, what the mask mandates, you know, that started in July, the curves are all kind of the same. And this thing, you know, the China virus or the COVID virus, it doesn't really discriminate. It'll go after whoever and whatever means they can. And now it's they talk about it mutating, and so you know, it's like water running uphill. It seems like it will do whatever it wants. But anyway, I appreciate all the work everybody did. I know it was difficult, and it also had to be done in a very short period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'd like to just, I think that it's been very, obviously, as the vote indicated, I think this is a very conflicted issue. My hope is that even though we mirror that conflict that's going on nationally, that we can model a conflict in which we're able to experience and express that in a positive and in a peaceful way. One of the places I worked as a college student had a big banner over it that said, "Attitudes are contagious. Make sure yours is worth catching." And I've heard it said before that kindness is contagious. We know that there's a lot of contagious illnesses that are about. One of the things I think that we have the opportunity is to show that kindness, regardless of stance, regardless of position, to truly love neighbor as ourselves and to show that kindness. That, more than anything, treating our neighbors with respect will get us through anything. And that's, I say it a lot, but I'm so fortunate to be in a small community where we do know our neighbors. And so even if we disagree with our neighbors, we can still support them, we can still help them out. And my hope is that we as a community will hold on to that, as well as washing our hands, as well as taking these other precautions. Please, God, please, if you are not feeling well, stay home. Stay home. If you've been quarantined, stay home. You know, the greatest way to prevent this is isolation. The greatest way to prevent this is distancing. Unfortunately, isolation and distancing crush our business. And it's great to have healthy people, but if they don't have places to employ them, we're going to be having a different issue. If we all work together to do whatever it is that we can, we should still be able to have viable businesses, new businesses, and hopefully relieve some of the business that's going on in our medical facilities. I think that while they need business to stay open, I think that they have more business than they want. And if we can relieve that business and keep our other businesses open, I think we'll be doing all right. I appreciate everyone's feedback. Please know that this is not taken lightly. I know that all of us, the 5 of us, have spent a lot of time sorting through research, trying to understand this the best that we're able to, and to make the best decision we can. You know, in retrospect, we may realize we did too much, we didn't do enough, but I know that we are all acting in good conscience and doing the best that we can with the information that we have. So I appreciate the collaboration, I appreciate the research, and I appreciate every one of you for all that you do. When you look at the number of employees that experienced or celebrated longevity milestones, I think it speaks to the community that we're working in, and I'm very fortunate to be a part of it. So thank you all for all the hard work. Anything else?
Thanks, Chuck, and thanks for running the meeting tonight.
It's nice to have the gavel back in my hand, Mark, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, I had to go to a funeral. It wasn't really one I could opt out of, and it was in Olathe, and I did wear a mask, and they do have a mask mandate down there, and I did wear a mask, and it was a small, it had to be a small funeral, otherwise it would have been an extremely large one. But I just didn't want to come into the building or come into town after being in down there, because it is a hot spot as well.
I appreciate your consideration. I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Okay, Keaton moved. We'll go ahead and let Mark second it then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned.